Visit wetandforget.com for a store near you.
This is the beat of sports.
Winning's intoxicating. And when you get it, and when you get that it factor, that buzz that people talk about your team, we all love to be part of that bandwagon. And it always leads to those moments where the people of power, whether it be a president, an AD, a football coach, ultimately must make decisions that become clouded. Well, what's the right decision of the troubled player? Well, wait a minute now. Is he a starter? Do we have a big game coming up? How important is it to our football team? You start to make decisions like we saw at Boise State with a player that may have had some issues. And we saw at Baylor, who had been a doormat for years in a conference that suddenly was among the better teams in the country. It makes you think irrationally at times.
The beat of sports with Mark Daniels.
9 a.m. weekdays on 740 The Game.
Orlando's #1 vape store. Special offer for all new customers at the 3 new Orlando area stores. Purchase a 12 milliliter of e-juice and receive a free starter kit. Visit thevapestoroonline.com for locations.
Welcome to Late Night Parents. I'm your host, Ted Hicks. We have a weekly podcast where we sit down and talk with game changers in the sports, technology, education fields. We even do product reviews and giveaways. Why, you ask? Because we're all parents. So if you're ready for an up-close and personal look, then you can check out our podcast. New episodes are available every Thursday. Catch us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. That's Late Night Parents. The site is latenightparents.com.
We are Orlando's sports leader. 740 The Game.
We are back for the final segment here at Full Court Press Radio, sponsored by SOFOELLC. This is Danny Thompson talking to you tonight from Orlando, Florida. 407-916-8255 or toll-free 800-729-8255. You want to get your last-minute things in for me and Mark tonight. Like I said, Paul's out tonight, but we know he's listening in, so he'll be back in the studio with us next week. So, Mark, we're going to finish up talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and the Chicago Bulls before we head up out of here tonight. You know, you asked me a question about the Milwaukee Bucks, and to me, the players we talked about Chris Middleton being the strength, and the weakness of this Bucks team right now is the fact of there is no interior presence. You know, for Greg Monroe, and he's not exactly the best defensive center in the league. He's pretty much he can barely guard a chair. The only defensive presence this team has is John Henson, and he's very foul prone and he's not exactly the strongest guy in the league. This is where they miss Larry Sanders, who retired last year, to take care of personal matters. This team misses him, and they don't have that guy in the interior block to guard somebody. If you're going against, the big centers that can score in the post or they can rebound or be very physical, Greg Monroe is far from that. So for me, the biggest weakness of this team is the fact of, yes, outside shooting is a problem, but there's nobody in the post at all. So it could be a field day for those teams with inside presences. But Mark, we talk about the weakness of this team, but what is the strength of the Bucks?
I would say, something that you touched on earlier with the Pacers. I think it's the versatility. One thing, with the Bucks, you can, kind of change guys in and out of the lineup. I always joke that I'm like, they have one point guard, one center, and 17 small forwards. But, seriously, though, these guys, really are very interchangeable. They can go play from the 4 down to the 3, and even, with Giannis, has sometimes played the 2 and the 1, even though I prefer him, at the 3 or the 4. But I'm just saying these guys are interchangeable. I think they have a lot of length. They can cover a lot of ground. If Jason Kidd implements a zone at some point, during the game, it's going to be tough, to get that ball, moving around there. So I think the versatility and the size, I think, is the strength of the team.
Interesting. So we've talked about 4 of the 5 teams, and we talk about now the final team of the division, the Chicago Bulls. And, the Bulls for me last year was disappointing because they did not get to they didn't beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. They didn't live up to what they were supposed to. But the player for me to watch on the Bulls this year, if you're watching League Pass, I mentioned him earlier, is Bobby Portis. A guy Mark was very high on, and Mark got me sold on him after reading his article on FCPRadio.com and watching Bobby Portis play. I think he's the guy to watch. I think if he can step into the role, Taj Gibson is gone. They've been trying to move him anyway, but now you don't have to take such a big ransom to get Taj Gibson out of there. You can actually find a pretty solid shooter or a solid swingman to get Taj Gibson out of your hands. But if you can get Bobby Portis to play at a high level, a good rebounder, solid inside scorer, it's going to work out. I like Bobby Portis, so he's my guy to watch in the Bulls. Mark, who is your guy?
I think I'm going to stay in the front court and go with Mirotic. This guy, I think really stepped into his own, late in the season last year. This is the reason, why, some of the guys you mentioned, like Gibson and Noah, have been involved, in trade talk rumors. It's kind of the reason why, because you have Gasol there. You just talked about Bobby Portis. You're talking about Mirotic. It's really such a loaded front court for those guys that you really can make a lot of different moves. But I think it's Mirotic. I thought he called on well. I thought he was able to play the offense well. I thought he was able to rebound well. I think he'll be a guy to watch in this offense moving forward.
Okay, I like that going forward. And Mirotic is a good player. Had great spot minutes. When he started those games, especially when Gasol was hurt and Noah was hurt, just really did damage on both ends of the floor. So, Mark, we know about the Bulls, but in your eyes, what's the biggest strength of the Bulls this year?
I would say, the biggest strength for the Bulls is probably, you know what I'm saying? I would say like this. I think the biggest strength, still relies on the front court, but I like the offensive versatility, that they have, particularly, with some of the young players. I think they have good offensive versatility. Paul Gasol, Jimmy Butler, Derrick Rose are back. I think that's going to help, and I think it's a good balance, between, the defensive teams, that Thibodeau had, before, before he moved on. So I would say, just the offensive versatility. I like that.
Okay. Good
call. And what do you think? Are the weaknesses? Of this Bulls team. What can hinder them from making them run to the title?
2 words: Fred Hoiberg. Everybody talks about how Fred Hoiberg runs a running gun style, and he's more open and more player friendly, and he's not Tom Thibodeau. The one question is, will he be able to preach defense the same way Thibodeau did? I know he's going to open the offensive game up. They're going to score more points. But if this team cannot defend at the same level that got them to this point, then it's pretty much pointless. The Bulls have some very, very good defenders. Gibson's a very good defender. We all know how good Noah is when he's defensively healthy. Jimmy Butler's an all-world defender. Derrick Rose has his moments. It is what it is. But, Dunleavy, I don't really count him. But Gasol, But if he can get these guys to play defensively at a high level all season, then you can't go against Chicago. But for me, I think if Hoiberg doesn't get the NBA coaching down and doesn't get this team playing defense, then it could be a long year in Chicago, and I think the ship will be sailing further away from it. So we're going to take a quick 30 seconds on this one. We're about to close out the show in the next 5 minutes. So, Mark, in 30 seconds, if you had to pick a starting 5 with the best players in this division, who is your starting 5?
Nope. Jimmy Butler's playing the 2, LeBron at the 3. I'll take Joakim at the 5. Point, not really sure. Maybe I'll go with the new guy Reggie Jackson, and at the 4, probably Pau Gasol.
All right. See, interesting choice in the starting 5. My 5 is a little bit different. I'm going to agree with you on this one. Reggie Jackson's the best point guard in the division. I don't see anybody else in the division. I know Derrick Rose is on there, but he's just not healthy enough for me. I am going to agree with you on Jimmy Butler. I'm also going to agree with you on LeBron James. They're both no-brainers. But for me, I'm taking Andre Drummond at center over Joakim Noah. I think he's the next big thing of that in the division, and he's one of the most talented players. And I'm also going to take Paul Gasol at the 5. He was an All-Star last year. It's kind of hard to leave Paul George off the list, but, LeBron and Paul play the same position, so it's kind of hard to bet against him. And Butler is becoming one of the 10 to 15 best players in the NBA as we speak right now, so it's kind of hard to do that. But, Mark, before we close it out, who wins the division in your eyes?
I say it's the Cavs. I think the Bulls have too much to adjust to. Cavs are ready to rock and roll. I have Cleveland.
And I don't think either one of us are going to disagree with that one. Cleveland wins the division hands down. I do like Milwaukee. I do like the other teams in the division. This division is probably the strongest of the three in the Eastern Conference because they might get the most playoff teams in the division. But I think Cleveland wins the division by at least 5 or 6 games. So it is what it is. And, it's hard to bet against a team that has 3 of the top 8, I think top 20 players in the NBA on the roster when fully healthy. And you're not even talking about Mozgov. You're not talking about Tristan Thompson. You're not talking about Mo Williams or the other guys they have on the team, J.R. Smith, Amon Shumpert. So I think the Cavs win the way with this division. So, Mark, we're about to close out the show. What you got coming up, and how does everybody get in contact with you?
Man, thinking about some things. I know some people want me to talk Pacers. Of course, my Philly fans want me to talk Sixers. So I'm looking, at that Southeast Division. I might talk about the Hawks. I might talk about the Pacers. We got to see, what I'm going to go with. But if you want to reach me, just Breakdown Sport at Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to have some fun with some memes and things like that, Breakdown Sport on Twitter, though, I guess talk about anything basketball related, I'm there.
Mark Johnson, social media manager and also NBA draft expert of Full Court Press Media. Thanks for coming on the show tonight, Mark. We'll see you next Tuesday.
All right, see you then.
And before we close things out on the show tonight, I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to some of the sponsors of the show. SOFOELLC, who is the title sponsor of the show. John Hamilton and his entire team out there, they do so many different things in the community, so many great things they have coming up. So please follow them at SOFOELLC on Twitter and on Instagram as well, too. A big shout out to our good friends at Jim Fouquet at Century 21 Rue Realty. If you're looking for a home here in the Orlando area, especially Central Florida, give Jim a shout. He's very, very good at what he does. He'll get you in your dream home, and he also will take care of you at the same time with very, very good services. And also to our good friends at Late Night Parents, and also their website and also their show. Follow them on Facebook as well, too. As far as my shouts as well, too, big shouts to everybody listening to the show every single week. Go on to the website, NBAFCPradio.com. I have my new Quick 5 column that's going to start debuting tomorrow as well, too. Big shouts to everybody listening to the show, calling the show, and also give us the big thank yous. And last but not least, I didn't shout her out last week, my wife, Ellen, at home, and my 2 children, who are probably staying up listening to Daddy on the show tonight. So I want to give those shout-outs to those 3 because they're my favorite 3 in the world. And so we'll be right back next week, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, with our Central Division preview. Me, Mark, Paul's going to be back in the studio, and our good friend Zach Oliver from Orlando, Pinstripe Post, talking everything Magic and Southeast Division. We're out next week. I see my producer Chris calling me. We'll see you next week, guys.